Shockwaves are crashing through the tennis world right now, and if you are not paying attention, you are about to miss one of the most electrifying stories unfolding in women's tennis this season. Something monumental is happening in the California desert, and it centers on a young woman who has spent her entire short career proving every doubter wrong, silencing every skeptic, and carrying the hopes of an entire nation on her shoulders with a smile that could light up the entire stadium. And at Indian Wells, we are talking about Alexandra Eala, the phenomenal, the fearless, the flat out, undeniable pride of the Philippines. And she has just received a first round bye at the BNP Paribas Open, one of the most prestigious combined events on the entire WTA calendar. Let that sink in for a moment. A first round bye. At Indian Wells, this is not just a scheduling detail buried in a tournament draw. This is a certified statement of arrival, a ranking milestone that announces to the entire tennis world that Alexandra Eala belongs among the elite. And if you stay with us through this video, we are going to show you exactly why this moment is so much bigger than tennis. To truly understand the gravity of this moment, we have to transport ourselves into the world of the BNP Paribas Open and understand what Indian Wells means in the landscape of professional tennis. The Indian Wells Tennis Garden, nestled in the Coachella Valley of California, is not just a venue, it is a cathedral. It is the place where legends sharpen their legacies, where rising stars announce themselves to the world, and where the desert heat seems to amplify every emotion, every point, every breath. The tournament is formally classified as a WTA 1000 event, the highest tier below the 4 Grand Slams themselves, which means the draw is deep, the competition is savage. And every single match carries enormous ranking points that can reshape a player's entire season in the span of one brutal, beautiful week. The stadium court, with its capacity of over 16,000 roaring spectators, creates an atmosphere that players describe as nothing short of overwhelming, the kind of atmosphere where only the mentally strongest survive and thrive. Getting a bye in the first round of a draw. This loaded means the tournament organizers, operating off the official WTA rankings, have recognized you as one of the seeded players worthy of protection in the early rounds. It means the ranking computer has done the math, and the math says Alexandra Eala has earned her place at this table. The entire tennis world is waking up to what Filipino fans have known for years, that something magical is happening, and her name is Alexandra Eala. And here is the thing that nobody is saying out loud, loudly enough. A first round bye at a WTA 1000 event is not something that falls into your lap. You cannot charm your way into a seated position. You cannot network your way into the draw. The only currency that matters is ranking points. And ranking points are earned through one thing and one thing only: winning matches against the best players in the world under pressure in stadiums full of people willing you to fail. And when Alexandra Eala steps onto that Indian Wells court, having skipped the first round entirely, she will do so as a seeded competitor, a player the draw has been structured around, a name that other players in that locker room are now checking in the bracket and circling with a mixture of respect and anxiety. This is not just a passing trend. This is not a feel-good story manufactured for headlines. Beneath this scheduling development lies a profound truth about the trajectory of one of the most exciting young players on the planet, and it is a truth that is reverberating across social media, across the Filipino diaspora, spanning every corner of the globe, and across a nation of over 100 million people who have been watching this journey with their hearts in their throats. We are witnessing history, and we are witnessing it together. Now, let us zoom into the cultural and national heartbeat that makes this moment so much larger than any single tournament, any single seeding. in any single buy. Alexandra Eala represents the Philippines, a nation of archipelagic beauty, of unbreakable spirit, of a people whose relationship with resilience is not a cliche but a lived generational truth. The Philippines has given the world extraordinary champions across multiple sports, but women's tennis has historically been a frontier that remained unconquered at the highest levels of the professional game. When Filipino fans travel to tournaments to support Eala, they do not just come as spectators. They arrive as a community, as a movement, draped in Philippine flags, faces painted, voices loud enough to rattle the rafters of facilities built for a very different demographic. At Indian Wells, the Filipino community in Southern California and across the wider American West Coast is enormous and deeply passionate, and the prospect of watching Alexandra Eala compete on the main stage of the BNP Paribas Open as a seeded player is the kind of thing that sells out watch. Parties, floods, group chats, and turns ordinary weekday afternoons into national events back home in Manila, in Cebu, in Davao, in every barangay where a television screen can be found and a tennis match can be streamed. To understand what Eala means to the Philippines beyond sport, you have to understand what it feels like to watch someone who looks like you, who comes from where you come from, not just participating at the elite level, but belonging there, thriving there, dominating there. The Philippines has Manny Pacquiao's legacy etched into its sporting soul, a boxing icon whose achievements transcended sport and became a symbol of national identity. But Eala operates in a sport that has historically been dominated by players from Europe, the Americas, and Australia, a sport with enormous economic barriers to entry, a sport where players from developing nations have faced structural disadvantages that go far beyond mere talent. What Eala has done is crash through those barriers, not with bravado, but with quiet, relentless excellence. And the grassroots movement she has ignited in Philippine tennis, inspiring young girls to pick up rackets, inspiring families to invest in coaching, inspiring a sports federation to dream bigger, is a cultural phenomenon that cannot be measured in ranking points alone. She is a beacon of hope, a unifying force in a country that celebrates its champions with a depth of love that is genuinely unlike anything else in the sporting world. The Filipino fan base is not passive. It is electric, it is organized, and at Indian Wells, it will be deafening. Historical comparisons in tennis offer a useful lens here. We think of Gabriela Sabatini as the icon who made Argentina fall in love with women's tennis in the late 1980s and 1990s. We think of Arantxa Sanchez Vicario carrying the weight of Spanish national pride on her shoulders. We think of the way Mary Pierce made for France believe. Each of those players represented something beyond individual achievement. They represented a nation's dream made flesh, a possibility that had never existed before them. Alexandra Eala is that player for the Philippines and by extension for Southeast Asia as a region that has been waiting for its own grand slam level presence in women's tennis. But here is why this feels fundamentally different from those past phenomena. The Eala is operating in the social media era where every match, every win, every moment is instantly shared, amplified, and celebrated across platforms that connect the Filipino diaspora instantaneously, regardless of time zones or geography. The representation she provides is not just visible to people at courtside, it is visible to every Filipino teenager with a smartphone, and that reach multiplies her impact in ways that Sabatini and Sanchez Vicario could never have imagined. Let us now trace the extraordinary journey of Alexandra Eala herself, because the story of how she arrived at this Indian Wells seating is the story of an athlete who has refused at every single stage to accept the ceiling that the world tried to place above her. Born on May 23, 2005 in Manila, Philippines, Alexandra Eala showed tennis talent from an age when most children are still figuring out how to tie their shoes. Let that sink in for a moment. The first Filipino ever in the entire history of the Open era to win a junior Grand Slam singles title. That is not a small thing. That is a paradigm shift, a moment where a door that had been closed for decades swung open with a force that echoed across an entire nation. But Eala did not linger in the junior world to collect more trophies. She transitioned to the professional circuit with a hunger and a maturity that belied her age. Working through the lower tiers of the WTA rankings with the methodical ferocity of someone who understood that every win, every point, every match was a brick being laid in the foundation of something much larger. She has secured wins against top 100 players, demonstrated the ability to compete on every surface, and continued climbing the rankings at a rate that has forced the tennis establishment to take notice. Her current ranking, which has earned her this seeding at Indian Wells, represents the highest a Filipino woman has ever been ranked in the professional tennis era, a record that stands not just as a personal achievement, but as a national milestone. She has also carried the Philippine flag on the world stage in competition formats beyond the individual tour, representing her country with a pride that is palpable every time she steps on court in national colors. The moment when she dedicated a victory to her family, to the Philippines, thanks to every young Filipino girl watching and dreaming. That was a moment of realized, undeniable greatness unfolding in real time. And it is a moment that lives in the memory of every fan who witnessed it. Eala's style of play is uniquely dangerous because it combines attributes that rarely coexist in a single package. She is a giant slayer, not because she overwhelms opponents physically, but because she outthinks them, out-patterns them, and then delivers her shots with a precision and timing that is perhaps her most dangerous weapon of all. She has shattered the glass ceiling of what was previously thought possible for a Filipino tennis player, and she has done it with a racket and a work ethic, which is the most beautiful way to shatter any ceiling. Now let us give the full picture to the established stars and top-ranked players who will navigate their way through this Indian Wells draw alongside Eala, because any great story needs the full cast. And the Women's Professional Tour in 2025 is stacked with champions and contenders who have their own extraordinary stories to tell. The top seeds at a WTA 1000 event of this magnitude include the kind of players who have defined the sport for the better part of a decade. Players like Aryna Sabalenka, the Belarusian powerhouse who has redefined what aggressive baseline tennis can achieve, winning multiple Grand Slam titles with a ferocity and power game that is genuinely difficult to watch. Without catching your breath, Sabalenka navigates the pressures of being the world's top-ranked player with incredible poise, and her presence in the draw serves as the ultimate measuring stick, the mountain that every rising player must eventually climb if they want to be considered truly among the elite. The champions separate themselves not just by their talent, but by how they respond when the moment demands everything they have, and the players at the top of this draw have proven repeatedly that they know how to respond. What makes this Indian Wells tournament particularly compelling for Eala is the stage it provides, a WTA 1000 draw where, with a first round bye already secured, she enters the second round with rhythm preserved, energy conserved, and mental focus fully intact, while other players are burning through their reserves in first round battles. That is not a trivial advantage. First round byes can be decisive, particularly on the hard courts of Indian Wells, where the physical demands accumulate quickly and every match played takes a measurable toll on a player's body. The profound underlying mutual respect that exists in the locker room of professional tennis, the acknowledgement among players that everyone in this draw has sacrificed enormously to reach this level, means that Eala's seeding is recognized not with resentment, but with the quiet nod of peers who know that rankings do not lie. Let us now break down the tactical reality of what Eala will bring to her matches at the BNP Paribas Open, because this is where the story moves from emotional to analytical and then back to emotional again, which is exactly the kind of journey that great tennis provides. When Alexandra Eala takes to the Indian Wells hard courts, she will deploy a style of play built around constructing points with intelligence before executing them with precision. Her forehand is her primary weapon, a shot struck with a high-revving topspin that allows her to not just push opponents back, but to genuinely threaten the lines with cross-court and inside-out patterns that create the width needed to open the court for her finishing attempts. Her backhand is solid, two-handed, and increasingly reliable as she has developed the physical strength to drive through the ball rather than simply redirect it. At the net, she is more comfortable than many players of. Her generation a reflection of her training background and her willingness to construct points that end with forward aggression rather than baseline attrition. What makes Eala uniquely difficult to prepare against is her ability to vary the pace and spin of her shots in ways that disrupt the timing of players who rely on pace matching to generate their own power. Against hard hitters, the Sabalenkas, the Rybakinases of the tour, she does not try to outpower them. Instead, she absorbs their pace, redirects it with precise angles, and uses the court like a chessboard, creating positions from which her opponent's next shot becomes inherently more difficult. Against defensive players and counterpunchers, she shifts gears entirely, dictating tempo, compressing the court, and finishing with the forward momentum that her fitness and footwork allow. The single most important factor in her Indian Wells matches will be her first serve percentage, when Eala's serve is functioning holding at her own service games at a high rate and putting pressure on opponents' returns. The entire tactical picture shifts in her favor. When her serve percentage drops and she faces break points regularly, the physical and mental load multiplies in a way that can compress even the most disciplined game plans. The wild card element, and there is always a wild card element when Alexandra Eala plays, is the crowd at Indian Wells with its enormous Filipino-American community presence in the stands. Eala will not be playing in a neutral environment. She will be playing with the kind of fervent emotional support that transforms a stadium into something approaching a home crowd experience, and the energy of thousands of Filipino fans chanting her name, waving their flags, willing every first serve in and every winner to land. That energy is not nothing. Players who have experienced the surge of crowd support at critical moments describe it as a physical sensation, a wave of adrenaline that can carry a player through moments of doubt that might otherwise prove fatal to a match. For Eala, the Indian Wells crowd is not just supportive backdrop, it is fuel. And she has shown in her career that she knows how to run on that fuel. A deep run at this tournament, quarterfinals, semifinals, or further would deliver ranking points that could push her to the highest position any Filipino woman has ever occupied in the WTA rankings, reshaping not just her own story, but the entire landscape of what is considered possible for tennis in Southeast Asia. Now let us zoom out from the courts, from the rankings, from the tactical diagrams, and ask the question that gives all of this meaning: what does this moment reveal about the human side of sport? And why does it matter to people who will never hold a tennis racket in their lives? The answer is that Alexandra Eala's journey to a seated position at the BNP Paribas Open is a story about what happens when talent meets. Sacrifice meets community, meets resilience in a combination so potent and so pure that it transcends the boundaries of sport entirely. She has not arrived here through luck or circumstance. She has arrived here through years of work done in the early mornings before the rest of the world was awake, through losses that could have broken her but instead rebuilt her stronger, through the weight of national expectation that she has carried not as a burden but as a source of energy and purpose. When we watch Alexandra Eala compete at Indian Wells, we are not just watching a tennis match, we are watching the embodiment of every Filipino family that ever dared to dream beyond their immediate circumstances, every young girl who ever held a racket and wondered if the sport she loved could ever love her back at the highest level. This is bigger than a game. This is a generational collision between a world that is changing and the old structures trying to hold their ground. And in that collision, the torch is being passed, not in a single dramatic moment, but in the accumulating weight of ranked victories, of first round buys earned through merit, of national records broken with quiet inevitability by a young woman from Manila who decided that the ceiling was not real. The real winner is the sport itself, a sport that grows more vibrant, more unpredictable, and more global than ever before every time a player like Alexandra Eala steps into a draw that previous generations would never have dreamed of entering. The human element that makes sport universally captivating is alive and roaring at Indian Wells this year, and it has a name, and that name is Alexandra Eala. The ceiling above her is not just cracked, it is gone, and the sky above her is limitless. Now we want to hear from you, and this is the part of the video where the conversation becomes a two-way street, because your perspective is exactly as valuable as anything we have said in the last several minutes. What is your prediction for how deep Alexandra Eala goes at the BNP Paribas Open this year? Does she reach the quarterfinals, push for a semifinal, or do you believe this could be the week she makes the kind of deep run that puts her name in headlines that have nothing to do with being a rising star and everything to do with being a genuine contender? Drop your bracket prediction in the comments right now and let us see what the community believes. And we want to know, where are you watching from? Are you part of the Filipino community in California, planning to be in those stands at Indian Wells? Or are you streaming from Manila, from Cebu, from somewhere else in the global Filipino diaspora? Tell us where in the world you are watching this history being made, because this community is global and we want to celebrate that together. If this video gave you the full story, the full context, and the full emotional reality of what this first round bye means for Alexandra Eala, the Philippines, and women's tennis, please hit that like button right now, because it genuinely helps this channel reach more fans who deserve to know this story. Subscribe so you do not miss a single update from Indian Wells, because we will be here covering every match, every moment, every milestone. This is your channel, this is our sport, and Alexandra Eala is just getting started.